Okay, so we are continuing with our introduction to Odysseus and the Odyssey. We are going to read this part of the story through a graphic novel, and this is sort of a summary graphic novel. This is not the Odyssey yet. A lot of things happen before the Odyssey that we need to know about to understand the Odyssey. And the easiest way for us to get this information is just to read this graphic novel summary. So these are our main characters. Odysseus, he is the prince and he later becomes the king of Ithaca, his wife Penelope, and his son Telemachus. Then we have Menelaus and Agamemnon. They are brothers. They are both Greek kings. Menelaus is the king of Sparta, and Agamemnon is the king, sort of the king of all the Greeks. There are kings under him, but he's sort of the head king. Then we will talk about Calypso, a goddess. She's going to have a large part in the Odyssey. She doesn't have as large a part in this story. I'm not even sure if we mention her today. We'll find out. Helen. Helen has a big part in the backstory of Odysseus's journey. She was the wife of Menelaus, but then she also became the lover of Paris. Paris is a prince of Troy. Now, we've been talking about the Trojan War, so you can kind of think for a second about what the start of this war might have been when we know that we have this woman who's entangled with this man. We will also have Circe, an enchantress. She is a major part of the Odyssey. Aphrodite, the god of love, she plays a big part in the backstory. Athena, the goddess of wisdom and war, she is Odysseus' champion. She is always on his side. Poseidon, the god of the sea, he does not like Odysseus. Zeus, the king of all kings, and then Homer, he's the poet who is credited with creating this story. Now, in terms of protagonists and antagonists, we should know that Odysseus is the protagonist, the main character. Now, the antagonists, the big overall antagonist is Poseidon, okay? And we'll learn about that more as we read, but he is the main antagonist who is working against Odysseus. We also have Calypso. She is going to be the antagonist of Book 5, and then Circe is going to be the antagonist of Book 10. So if we take a second to look at our questions, our protagonist is Odysseus, and our antagonists are Calypso, Circe, and Poseidon. You might want to make a note that Poseidon is the main antagonist, or maybe make him bigger because he is the main antagonist. All right, a little bit more about Homer before we get started with the background story. So we're going to go to pages 10 and 12. All right, so I'm just going to go over this really quickly, but it's here if you want more information. So Homer is thought to have lived in the 8th century BCE or sometime around then. The first record of him existing was between 800 BCE and 750 BCE. That means before the year 0. Okay, so we're going to add 800 years to 2020. Okay, so 2,820 years ago, a long, long time ago. He is known for being an amazing poet, but he would have performed poems by singing them, often accompanied by a lyre, a string musical instrument. And he would have performed these songs, these poems in an amphitheater. So people would have come to watch him. Homer was blind, so this might explain why his eyes look like this in this image, but we know that he is blind. Like I said, if you want to know more about it, it's here in the PDF. But essentially what we need to know is that Homer is the poet. He's thought to have lived between 750 and 650 BCE, before the Common Era. And he also created the Iliad. The Iliad is another very famous text. Now, what we're reading today is not the original Odyssey. We are reading a graphic novel today because we're trying to kind of just get the summary of what happened before the story happened. We'll start with the Odyssey next class. And like I've mentioned, the Odyssey was not originally written down. It was performed. So Homer would have performed it at first. That's why he's credited as the creator. But then other people would have performed it. Like, this is Homer's story and I'm performing it now. Okay? All right, so we are going to get started with Odysseus' backstory, getting to know him. This first section is going to set up his origin story, which is really important, and it's going to be important to us because you are going to eventually write an origin story. All right, so let's go to the graphic novel. I'm scrolling through the PDF. This is in the PDF. There are faster ways to do this, but we'll be fine. All right, introducing Odysseus. This is meant to be Homer the poet. This is the story of the ancient Greek hero Odysseus. Centuries ago, I, Homer, told of his adventures in my famous poems, the Iliad and the Odyssey. So like I said, this is a summary of the stories. Homer doesn't actually say this in either of the poems. This is just kind of a summary to give us context that we need. So Odysseus was born on the Greek island of Ithaca that still exists today, where his father is king. As a child, Odysseus is badly hurt while hunting wild boar in the woods. The scar on his thigh never fades. Now that's important because if you think, many heroes are marked in some kind of way, so you can always tell who they are because they have something on them that will always reveal their identity. And for Odysseus, this scar is it. He has a scar on his thigh. Then, as a young man, he sails to Messenia on the Greek mainland. So he lives on an island and he sails to the mainland. The son of Messenia's king gives him a powerful bow. It's so powerful that only Odysseus can string it. All right, this is the second really important thing we need to know about Odysseus. He has a scar on his thigh that's always going to let us know it's him. And then he was able to string a bow, and he was the only one who could do it. Now, what that means is you can see how this bow is sort of curved, and it would have been made out of wood. In order to put the string on it, you would have to bend the wood. So it takes some strength to bend it and get the string on correctly. And Odysseus was the only person strong enough to string that bow. That will be important. Odysseus grows up tough and strong, a natural leader, admired by everyone. He's clever, energetic, brave, and sometimes disobedient and headstrong. Some person who's watching him go by, he's very intelligent. He's not especially handsome, but he's friendly and interesting with an entertaining way of talking. A king's son must marry. It's time for Odysseus to find a wife. He sets off for the kingdom of Sparta, home of Princess Helen. Who wouldn't want to marry Helen? Great question. All right, so let's do a recap of what we've learned about Odysseus. How do we know that he is strong? Well, we know that he is strong because he's given a bow by the king of Messenia, and he's the only person who can string it. So that means he bent the wood and was able to attach the string. What other words are used to describe him in this section? He's clever, obedient, brave, sometimes disobedient, but in a good way, and a natural leader. Reminds me of John Lewis. He gets in good trouble. All right, and then what pattern emerges in the origin story? These are 3 steps you need to include when you write an origin story for your own hero. This will come much later after we've read probably another epic or so. But these are the 3 steps, and I'm going to stop the video here, and you might want to pause and copy this down. Oops. All right, so the pattern is he is born into royalty. Most epic heroes are born into upper class status at birth. The status of the hero at birth is important. So the first pattern of an origin story is, 1, you need to learn about the hero's birth. The hero's birth always has some part of the story. So for him, the important part of his birth is that he was born already a royal. All right, the second part is an early obstacle that all heroes must face. So Odysseus faced an early obstacle when he was attacked by a boar and he received a lasting scar. Okay. All epic heroes have some kind of early obstacle, like before they get into their big journey, that's going to leave a lasting impression on them, either physically or mentally. All right. And then the last part of the origin story is the reveal of powers. Odysseus reveals that he has a power. He has super strength when he strings the bow that no one else can string. This is really important because this shows him setting himself apart and being special. And then if there's a bow that only he can string, that's going to be an important part of the story later on. All right, so pause this if you need to copy it down, and this is going to be the end of this video.